To discuss this story a little further, we're now joined by the Executive Director at Amnesty International South Africa, Shenilla Mohamed. Shenilla, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. Meg Maharaj described this as a watershed moment, and I know that you've worn a journalist's hat for many years, and so you've seen lots of big stories. How significant is this one in South Africa's history?
Good evening, Peter, and good evening to your viewers. Well, you know, Peter, it is a very significant moment in South Africa's history for the simple reason that, you know, the Constitutional Court has reclaimed its power when it, you know, with relation to a former President Jacob Zuma. I mean, for years now, we have seen this systematic attack, and as Justice Khampepe said, a campaign against the judiciary. And I think today we saw the judiciary take back its power and basically make it very clear by that through the highest court in the land that this will no longer be tolerated, that the rule of law will be, will be sustained, and that anybody who tries to bring down the rule of law or threaten the judiciary or the Constitution will no longer be tolerated, no matter who you are.
And I think when I hear you speaking, and Mr. Maharaj earlier, people may be thinking about the contempt of court charge, but as you've been saying, it's much, much more than that.
Absolutely, Peter. I mean, look, this is the start as far as we're concerned. I mean, you know, it's a very historic judgment, and, you know, the judgment is fierce. The judgment is extremely well written, and it's, you know, it's great law and precedent. But, you know, we still have a long way to go. And I think what's so great about this judgment is that it has literally opened the door to the rest of the rot to come out of the closet. And so now nobody can try to, not appear in court or try to hide behind loopholes within the law, etc., in the way that former President Jacob Zuma has done. And yes, him going to jail or being sentenced to 15 months in jail is important because it's about accountability, it's about responsibility, but it's much bigger than that. It's really about telling South Africa, through the words of the highest court in the land, that, you know, we will stamp out corruption, and the judiciary is independent, and the judiciary is not going to tolerate attacks on its members, or, as Justice Khampepe says, that, you know, if the Constitution is not upheld, then it's not worth the paper that it's been written on. So it's about protecting the Constitution and ensuring that the rule of law in this country is upheld.
The judgment was quite scathing, as you said, and they've used words and expressed the idea that so much was under threat, not just the judiciary, but also that people may have been incited because he was not an ordinary citizen.
And in fact, Peter, we still don't know what the outcome of this judgment is going to be on the ground. I mean, we've heard various people who are in the camp of former President Zuma making pronouncements, telling people to go out into the street, you know, and basically saying, you know, I even saw an interview today with Edward Zuma where he said that, you know, if anybody tried to take his father, they would have to kill him first. So we don't know yet what the repercussions of this is going to be in practical terms. However, I do think that hopefully sense will prevail and people will not take to the streets and try to further undermine the rule of law in this country, because, you know, they've seen what can happen when you do that. I mean, you know, President Zuma and his team really, I mean, they tried every trick in the book to try to postpone, to try to distract, to try to detract from the issues at hand, and, you know, for him not to face his day in court. And I think the message has reached loud and clear to everyone that if you try anything that is outside the boundaries of the law, you will face the wrath of the law.
Help me understand, just from a layman's point of view, as an ordinary citizen, why I should care about a decision like this today?
Well, I think, Peter, it's a really important question you're asking because, most of these, the state capture and, all the issues around it have really been couched in political language. So it's all about survival of the ANC, politics, etc. But actually, Peter, it's about the average person on the street, because every cent, every bit of corruption, every violation of policy and procedure, and every irregular expenditure meant that those people who are living in abject poverty, those whose human rights have been violated, those people who have no water, those children who sit in schools without roofs over their heads, all of those people have been directly impacted on by what has been going on. I mean, corruption has a human face to it. And the human face we see in a country where the majority of people have still not realized their basic economic, social, and cultural rights. And so we should care because, for every cent that has been stolen, it means a cent has been taken away from the development and the basic human rights of the people of South Africa. And 27 years after independence, we still have a situation where the majority of the people in this country do not have equality, do not have basic human rights that they should have. And a lot of that money that has been stolen should have gone towards that.
Listening again to Mr. Maharaj, he said that he found a situation that became quite untenable and then he chose to retire. He didn't say anything at the time, and I suppose questions may be raised about people who were around the former president, and even now perhaps haven't gone to the Commission of Inquiry, the State Capture Commission, to say what they knew, because following this conversation that we're having, it's so important that we fully understand everything that happened.
Absolutely, Peter. And I think, the greatest importance of this judgment today is that, anybody who tries to escape the Zondo Commission is going to really have a hard time doing so because, they are required by law to appear if they are summoned. And, and again, everyone who was there, everyone who was implicated, everyone who knew what was going on. Because remember, Peter, it's not just former President Zuma who, was at the forefront of all of this. I mean, when you look at the amount of money, we are talking billions. We're talking absolute billions. There were many, many, many people involved. And I think, all those people are going to start to see their day in court, which I think is the beauty of a constitutional democracy. And it's really what the Constitutional Court handed us today, a hope that justice will be served. I think for a long time now, South Africans have been unsure about where this is going, And, as you and I were discussing before the interview, even today, we were sitting at the edge of our seats because we weren't sure. And that is the impact that President Zuma's campaign has had, because it has really also made us start to doubt, whether or not we will see justice. So to some extent, he was, successful in that. But, the minute that Justice Kampepe announced the decision, I feel like there was a collective sigh of relief throughout the country that we are safe, our constitutional democracy is safe, our constitution is safe, and there is hope that all those who violated the constitution and stole from the people of South Africa will see their day in court.
Do you think that this judgment in South Africa is an important one for a message across a continent where the idea of a former president being jailed for contempt of court is probably highly unlikely, that perhaps it's a sign of what could be possible in functioning democracies?
Absolutely. And I think, Peter, unfortunately, we have the big man syndrome that continues to play out in Africa, where we have dictatorships, where we have, people's rights are violated continuously. I mean, we saw in Swaziland today, people's right to protest was taken away from them. We see that all around us throughout the continent, and there is no justice, there is no accountability. The AU and SADC have been toothless because they are made up of these very same people. And, hopefully today's, ruling or today's judgment will show the people of Africa what is possible when people fight back. And, again, we must remember that, many people in South Africa have been fighting to protect the Constitution. And I'm not saying other Africans haven't, but what is possible when the fight is taken to the end, and when you have a strong constitution and you have a working democracy and an independent judiciary, then the rule of law governs everything else. And I feel like this will give hope to people in Africa where there's darkness, where they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like this will then also give people an idea of how to shine that light, because it's only through a functioning judiciary and separation of executive powers and the strength of civil society that change can happen.
Amnesty International's Executive Director here in South Africa, Shenilla Mohamed, thank you very much indeed for your time and your thoughts.